Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the UN's Refugee Agency raises the alarm about the conditions of refugees and migrants in Libya. Deepening dangers are faced there, including kidnappings, extortion, torture, and human trafficking. Also, animal rights activists in Zimbabwe trying to force the government to back down from plans to sell 35 baby elephants to China and Pakistan. They filed an application in the High Court to block the sale. Authorities, though, deny planning on shipping the animals out. Also, Senegalese food blogger Ibrahim Ndoye, a man of good taste. Every time he opens up his kitchen online, he whets the appetites of thousands of his followers. But first, Libya is not a safe country of asylum. And conditions for refugees and migrants stuck there are so bad that some are bribing their way into detention centres. So says the UN's Refugee Agency, the UNHCR. It's raised the alarm about the deepening dangers faced by migrants in Libya that include kidnapping, extortion, torture and human trafficking. In July, more than 50 people were killed when a detention centre was bombed during an ongoing offensive against Tripoli. Despite the instability in the country, Libya is still a main stopping-off point for many Africans fleeing war and poverty and trying to make it into Europe. Currently, there are an estimated 45,000 registered refugees and asylum seekers, as well as around 650,000 migrants in Libya. Vincent Cochetel from the UNHCR tells us more.
We are all focused on the dramatic situation in 19 detention centers, where there are about 5,000 people. The people are frightened to be kidnapped, so many wish to be detained because they feel safer in spite of the terrible conditions. They also hope that they will be identified by UNHCR and that we will be able to resettle all of them to Europe and elsewhere, which is unfortunately not possible.
How has that offensive by General Haftar's forces against Tripoli that started earlier this year affected the situation regarding refugees in Libya at the moment?
The main consequence for us has been lack of access to some detention center, inability to move to some areas in the Greek Mauritania, the Tripoli area. We had to close 2 of the community daycare centers that we operate in Tripoli because of the security situation. So we are not able to service the people how we used to do 6 months ago.
So has the situation been getting worse over the years of your following the conditions faced by refugees in Libya?
Yeah, the conditions are worse because at the same time there is a lot of frustration among the refugees. We can understand that. Many have suffered a lot, but we have no solution for the majority of them. We believe that by the time the people arrive in Libya, it's already too late. We need to do more in the neighboring countries, not just to inform the people about the dangerous journey they take, but make sure that we provide them credible alternative in countries of first asylum so they don't feel the need to go to Libya.
And what else can the international community do to help?
Well, bring peace to Libya because first it's a political crisis. Humanitarian actors are not going to solve the situation there.
Vincent Cochetel there speaking to me a little earlier on. Well, in other news, EU election observers say that candidates in Mozambique's general elections did not face a level playing field and that the ruling party dominated the campaign. The EU mission also accuses President Filipe Nyusi's Frelimo party of having benefited from unjustified use of state resources. That includes police escorts and media coverage. The count from Tuesday's vote is still underway. It's widely expected to return Nyusi to power. African observers of the poll, though, have praised it for being peaceful and well organised. 22 more opposition supporters have been released from detention in Cameroon. The group had spent 9 months behind bars awaiting trial over illegal post-electoral demonstrations back in 2018. A judge granted them bail on Thursday and ordered their return to court on the 7th of December. The leader of the Cameroonian Resistance Renaissance movement, Maurice Kamto, was freed from jail earlier this month after having spent 9 months in jail himself. He accuses President Paul Biya of having stolen last year's vote and has vowed to keep up anti-government protests. And a 21-year-old man's been sentenced to life for raping a 7-year-old girl in South Africa. Nicholas Ninau was caught naked with the child in the toilets of a restaurant in Pretoria last September. He now says that he'd been on a 3-day-long drug bender at the time. During sentencing, Judge Papi Mosopa said that gender-based violence in South Africa is a pandemic and that the courts should be imposing sentences to deter others from committing similar offences. Well, in Zimbabwe, activists are trying to block the export of dozens of young elephants, which are allegedly on their way to zoos in China. A court petition to prevent the handover has been submitted to the High Court. The elephants have been held for months in pens in the country's main Hwanga National Park. Recently, the global wildlife trade regulator agreed to a near total ban on the export of African elephants to zoos overseas. Activists in Zimbabwe say the authorities want to export the animals before those rules take effect and say that if the sale goes ahead, the government will be in contempt of court. Ryan Truscott tells us more about the efforts to stop the elephants being shipped to Asia.
Certainly managed to shine a spotlight on the issue. Animal rights activists, and of course not all of them are in Zimbabwe, since this is the kind of issue that gets global outrage. But they've insisted that they've known about these baby elephants being captured since early this year. Apparently there are 37 of them, some as young as 3 years old. Lawyers went to court as far back as May to try to get an order blocking them from being shipped out of the country, but there's been no judgment handed down yet. The lawyers for the activists last week wrote to the national parks authorities asking them not to transport the elephants before that judgment is made. One lawyer told me that he believes the authorities want to export these elephants before new international regulations come into effect. As you mentioned, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species back in August agreed that live African elephants can only be shipped to countries within Africa and not to zoos overseas.
And what's the government's response been to the outcry?
Well, the state parks authority says it's not true that these animals are being sold. It says that they've been captured as part of routine wildlife management practices. But activists are highly skeptical because, after all, the capture and sale of live elephants has been done before here. Between 2012 and 2018, around 100 elephants were exported to China and Dubai, and the government said it raised nearly $3 million for conservation from those sales. The wildlife authorities here say that there are too many elephants in Zimbabwe. Officially, their numbers are about 80,000, and those figures go up and down, not least because elephants cross back and forth with the border with Botswana. But the authorities do say that there are too many elephants and that they pose a threat to humans and their crops, and that they also damage trees within the national parks that are vital to the ecosystems.
Ryan Truscott there for us. And finally, food blogger Ibrahima Ndoye's opened up his kitchen to the continent and the world with his posts. The Senegalese foodie talks about his favourite recipes online, and he's seen his international following go from strength to strength. Nicolas Chaubin tells us more.
In Europe or the United States, food bloggers are everywhere. There aren't as many in Africa. But in Senegal, Ibrahima Ndoye, who's a salesman during the week, posts videos of his recipes every weekend on social media. He now has 126,000 followers on Facebook.
We have peanut powder here. It gives the dish a specific taste, and it allows us to replace a little of the fat that we would have put in the sauce.
After buying food from his local market, Ibrahima goes home, sets up his camera and starts cooking Senegalese dishes.
If you like African dishes, you will find that there are very few good online videos. The list of ingredients are usually incomplete, the recipes are not very precise, and the way the videos are filmed is not good at all. So I thought, here's a challenge for me.
His videos are not only watched in Africa. He has received messages and questions from people living in England, Italy and New Zealand. Very often, his friends come to his house to try out his recipes.
This is really tasty. And thanks to the chili, we reach great heights.
As his online popularity soars, Ibrahima might one day need to open his own restaurant.
I think I have a plan for my weekend now. Well, that is, though, all the time we have for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again. Take care.